Let's get going with the striking here. The biggest thing to me, and I kind of want to see if you are in agreement or disagreement, we have what will likely be an open stance fight for the majority of it.
Sure.
So Benoit Saint-Denis coming out in the southpaw, Paddy mostly orthodox, but does switch from time to time. And we're looking at two guys who, if we're being realistic, absorb almost an identical amount of strikes per minute, land an almost identical amount of strikes per minute. Maybe you could make an argument that BSD striking is a little bit cleaner, especially since he switched camps to Nicholas Ott just after the Moicano loss, and he's looked damn near flawless since then. But to me, on the feet, this is a really intriguing matchup, and I see places where both guys can really exploit the other. What are your thoughts?
I really love this match, and I'm thinking that this is going to be fight of the night on 329. Now, obviously, the main event could come up and one-up these guys because Conor and Max never have boring fights. But BSD and Paddy are definitely going in there to just throw down. And look, Paddy, he's maybe not as durable as he once was. The Justin Gaethje fight is part of the reason. BSD coming through the ranks was super durable. He suffered that knockout. So I think the durability has diminished kind of evenly as well. Like you said about the striking numbers, they're all sort of similar. I think both guys are going to be doing the exact same thing they've always done, which is coming out, trying to get pressure forward, get in their opponent's face, and bring the fight to them. But it's going to be interesting to see who's actually more durable because both guys land big shots. So Paddy the Baddy, he's not the fastest striker in the world. He's kind of slow, actually. And he does find his targets, but often it's very telegraphed. So, I mean, there's nothing wrong with throwing telegraph shots as long as they're landing, but Paddy does sort of show you what he wants to throw and then he throws it. But what I think is good about Paddy as far as what he does on the feet is he's able to mix up his shot selection really well. And what I mean by that is he's not just a headhunter. Like, of course, he wants to do damage and try to knock his opponents out, but he's also willing to go to the body. He's also kicking the legs a pretty good bit. And he's got a wide variety, right? He loves to throw knees to the body. He loves to throw kicks to the leg. He's really good at throwing his heavy hands. But it's going to be interesting to see how he deals with the pressure of BSD because when Benoit comes across the cage, he puts, caution to the wind and he's just coming after you and trying to land shots. There are opportunities where Paddy's going to be able to sneak his shots in, even if they are slower and more telegraphed, in on BSD as he's, getting square with his opponent and trying to track him down against the cage. So I think that BSD needs to watch out for the uppercuts of Paddy the Baddy. If he was able to land some flush uppercuts on Justin Gaethje, sort of doing the same thing that BSD does, which is pressure forward, trap you against the cage, you tend to get a little bit square there. I think that BSD could wind up getting rocked by some of those shots, but Paddy also stands straight up. There's no head movement, and it drives me crazy, right? His head is always on the center line, and he's a big, tall figure for 155, so his head is there to be hit, and BSD is a headhunter. Obviously, we see him mix it up to the body well. He does a really good job at putting that to the body in the open stance situation. It's always going to be there, especially if you feint high and then go low. You can almost always touch the torso of your opponent in the open stance. So BSD needs to be a little bit cautious when he does bring his pressure. And I do predict for you that BSD will be the one trying to bring the pressure. What we've seen out of Paddy is he usually wins fights when he's the pressure forward fighter, but he also knows when to find his spots and his moments in rounds to bring pressure. And he's been pretty good at showing us his ability to evade big shots and sort of use the octagon and all this free space that he has. So BSD will likely come out as the pressure guy, and it'll force Paddy to be a little bit more of a counter striker. I don't love that because it didn't work all that well against Justin Gaethje. Now, Paddy's as tough as an old leather boot, so he was able to find his shots, and he ended up having a really good interim title fight with Justin Gaethje. But his best moments in that fight were when he was pressuring forward and sending more than one single shot, but combinations. And then as soon as the combination ended, instead of letting everything reset, letting Justin reset, getting right back on it, throwing more strikes. That's actually something that BSD does really well. BSD will throw his big strikes as soon as they land a 3 or 4 punch combination. Before the reset happens, he's back right on it again, going for another combination. And yes, this one is not an easy fight to predict. It's very interesting how both men approach fights. And I will say that BSD's change in camp and his game plan ability has actually increased, and he's now a little bit more difficult to deal with because he knows exactly how to win fights and where to take his opponents to drown them. And if you boil this fight down, I think it's going to be a war. I think it has the potential to be fight of the night. And I think that the grappling aspect, which we're going to get into, isn't going to be as on display as we see from a BSD usually, or as we have seen even from a Paddy the Baddy. I think both guys have good grappling and are going to be able to negate each other's grappling to a level. And while we may see some ground and pound, we may see some scrambles, for the most part, I think this fight's going to take place on the feet. And yeah, I can't wait to see how it goes down, because both of them have a lot of power. Neither of them have great defense, but it does make for an entertaining fight.
Yeah, so a couple of things with the striking. I've really liked the way that BSD has looked since switching camps. Yeah. I think Nasruddin Imavov is one of the most elite strikers at 185. Yeah. Obviously, they're running an extremely well-run camp there with Nicholas Ott.
Sure.
BSD and Nasruddin being the two primo athletes in that stable. So they're both getting a lot of attention. I like that he's kind of changed his approach to the fighting. He's settling in a little bit. He's looking a little bit cleaner. He would have the tendency, because he was winning that Dustin Poirier fight pretty well. And Dustin said, I got my butt kicked in the first round, and then I came back in round number 2. And, obviously you saw what happened. So, BSD is learning to take his time. He's learning to not be so headhunty and just ready to get the fight over with right this minute, because you end up paying for that when you get in there against elite level competition.
Sure.
If you're, okay, I've got my opponent hurt, but my opponent's also very seasoned, very, very durable. They've got good counters. They're sneaky. They're a veteran, et cetera, especially like Dustin Poirier, like Renato Moicano, the two people that he lost to back in 2024. I think he let the fight get a little bit away from him to some degree. And I haven't seen that in his last 4 fights since the camp switch. So I'm really happy to see that. I do think that he's cleaned up the loopiness of his strikes. 2 things I didn't love about BSD's striking: he had a lot of power and he did have the ability to finish people, but he would be very loopy. Mm-hmm. So his hooks would be very loopy, his uppercuts, things like that, almost kind of what Paddy does as well.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that he would get really square with his opponent, almost to the point where his shoulders are just at a perpendicular angle to the cage.
Right.
And I didn't love that. So I'm seeing those things kind of get cleaned up. Going back and watching the Roofy fight in preparation for this video, there were a few times that he chased a little bit, trying to get Mauricio to the ground. Now, obviously, he knew he had the ground advantage there, so maybe some of the chasing was for that reason, but he's got to be careful chasing Paddy down, because Paddy, as you said, his stuff is a bit telegraphed, but somehow it's like a DDP. We're going to break him down, just in a week's time. He's the next main event. Some of his stuff is a little telegraphed, a little wild, a little, just erratic, but he seems to land and he seems to knock people out. And Paddy doesn't have that kind of power or that kind of knockout ability, but he does have the ability to change the fight with 1 or 2 shots.
Sure.
And I'm going to save this part of the conversation for intangibles, but just to kind of, preview it a little bit, Paddy tends to have a better chin. BSD has been knocked out before. Paddy has not.
Right.
And so Paddy, we've seen Paddy in some wars, and he's taken some serious damage in his career. So that's going to be a factor. I think Benoit Saint-Denis cannot afford to take as many shots as Paddy can afford to take at this stage of his career.
Right.
Just because Paddy's one of those guys that seems to be an anomaly, and he just kind of has a granite chin.
Scousers can't get knocked out.
Apparently not. And until further notice, I mean, Paddy saying that seems ridiculous. It sounds ridiculous, but he's proven to us, even, eating some bombs from Justin Gaethje, who we just saw finish Ilia Topuria on the White House lawn, shows that he's got a really very high level of durability, especially with his chin. So I want to give the striking advantage before I hand it back off to you to Benoit Saint-Denis.
Okay.
I think that with this camp change, he's cleaner, he's tighter, he has a better shot selection, and I think Paddy gets a little too chin high and a little too hands low at times, and he's a little bit easier to find. And the quickest distance between any 2 points is a straight line.
Right.
And I think Benoit's striking has been cleaned up to where it's more economical in the sense that it's out and back, and it's not looping. It's not telegraphed.
It's not throwing his balance off and everything like that.
Exactly, where Paddy's is still a little bit like that, as we saw in the Justin Gaethje fight, which was the last time we saw Paddy. So I want to like carve out a little asterisk to say that I do think that the striking advantage is BSD's, but that said, BSD cannot afford to take the type of damage that Paddy can afford to take if he wants to win this fight.
Yeah, I may be crazy for saying this, but I think Justin Gaethje was the perfect warm-up fight for BSD.
If you want to call it that.
For Paddy, because stylistically, we see BSD do some of the similar things that we saw Justin Gaethje do. He loves to try to get inside. I think he might have even learned that collar tie from Justin Gaethje, and we've seen him go out there and really push the pace and try to get in somebody's face. He gets square. Justin Gaethje gets square at times. And Paddy the Baddy, of course, he lost that fight, but he did learn in the fight how to deal with it. And we saw the first rounds be less competitive than the later rounds, which means Paddy was improving as the fight was going on. Now, of course, Justin was able to rev it up and change his game plan a little bit, change his tactics, and still get the win. But I think that Paddy the Baddy actually is going to be pretty well conditioned for how to deal with a guy like BSD, who loves to bring the pressure, loves to get into that dirty boxing range. Like you said, he's cleaned up his boxing, and it is more straight to the point. And, you know, he's better with his shots. He's not coming off his balance too much. He's not compromising his base. But that does still happen at times when you fight that gung-ho and you know, without as much caution. So I'm interested to see how Paddy deals with it. The thing that does scare me a little bit about Paddy, and it should segue well into the grappling, is BSD has power. Justin Gaethje had power, and I don't know how many times he knocked Paddy to the ground, but it was several times. I think it was like 2 in the first round where he actually dropped Paddy, and I don't know if they were like, you know, he got a concussion and fell to the ground, or if he just got hit and needed to collect his thoughts for a second on the ground and thought maybe it'd be better, and hopefully Justin would come down into the guard or something like that. But BSD does have the ability to control this fight with its power on the feet and then take it to the ground, because if Justin Gaethje's able to get to that, you know, north-south type position, or if he's able to get to, you know, a collar tie or a snap down position, he could end up finding his way to the back, which is not something that Justin Gaethje was doing with Paddy. He was just staying over in that snap down position and looking for his ground and pound. I also
proved to be a really good move for Justin too. He used that against Ilya as well.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Most people think, and even fighters train this way, if somebody does snap you down and you weren't able to, you know, prevent that, now you're on all fours, the next likely position that they're going to go for is to spin around through one side or the other, get to your back, and then start to either put a hook in or do some ground and pound to flatten you out, something like that. And Justin Gaethje doesn't do any of that. He just likes to sit right there and find his openings from that position. So I think BSD, being a more jiu-jitsu heavy grappler, because he loves to obviously wrestle, but he does like to go for submissions. So once he does get Paddy rocked with a shot, he could look to snap him down a little bit if Paddy does decide to shoot or something, and then he would look to transition. But I would almost say it's better to do what Justin did than to try to go to a traditional jiu-jitsu style fight with Paddy on the ground, because Paddy is a very good jiu-jitsu grappler. He's not good at getting takedowns. He's not good at getting his opponents to the ground, but he is very good in the jiu-jitsu, you know, positions that are available for him on the ground. So I'm interested to see how the power of BSD early can dictate where this fight takes place, because I think the best chances for BSD to win would come in the next segment for us, which is the grappling. I think he would have a better chance at getting to a dominant position and looking for ground and pound. There's a better chance he wins the fight if he does that than if he were to either just stand with Paddy for 15 minutes or if he were to go submission hunting once he has Paddy to the ground.
So, okay, so I think that's a good segue, but I still need your advantage. Who's got the striking advantage, Paddy or Benoit? It's a hard one.
Yeah, it's a hard one, and it really could go either way. I think these guys are like, you know, 49, 51%. It could truly go either way, but I'm going to give the striking advantage slightly to BSD.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. You know, the little bit cleaner, a little bit more tightened up lately.
Yeah.
And I think that's the right call.